Go the Distance. Chapter 21. Cerberus' Lullaby. The end of the cave suddenly opened, pulling apart like someone was parting overgrown vines. Quickly, Meg saw what was on the other side. Cerberus. The massive three-headed creature was as black as coal and as large as the first monster she had lured Hercules to fight when she was still working for Hades. She watched as one of the heads snored, its mouth opening and closing, revealing teeth as large as columns on the building. Drool puddled around its massive mouth and oozed into the river. The creature was collared and tethered to something on the ground, but it could certainly move its heads. There was no sailing past the thing without being swallowed whole. To make matters worse, the area around the animal was littered with hundreds of bones and skulls that she could only assume were the remains of other foolish mortals who had tried to enter the underworld with their lives intact. She needed to get ready to face it. She quickly began unhooking Athena's flute. "Could you slow this boat down?" Meg said, but Karen kept a steady rowing pace. She cursed herself for not using her time on the boat more wisely. She had mere seconds to prepare, and she wasn't even sure the tune she was going to attempt with Athena's flute, let alone if she could remember how to play it. Athena had sensed her heart was not in it. Would Cerberus be the same? If she couldn't produce a solid melody for the beast, she was done for. A low howl rocked the cavern, and Meg looked up. Cerberus's right head was fully awake and alerting the other two of the mortal before them. The three heads sprang up, and the creature lurched forward, filling up every available space in the cave. Its eyes were blood red, and its snouts were as large as stifling birds. Spit flew from each mouth, landing inches from the boat as the dog chomped at the air. The sound reminded her of bones being snapped. She tried hard to ignore it. "You play so well you could put Cerberus to sleep," she thought. But the phrase didn't make her think of Aegeus this time. It made her think of the challenge at hand, and what it would take to return to Hercules. "Put this beast to sleep, and get Katerina so you can leave this dreary place," she told herself. She was about to play for her life. Literally. "Goodbye, mortal," Karen said in an air of glee as the boat neared the creature. He'd clearly seen how this story typically ended. "He won't see it again today," Meg vowed. She lifted Athena's flute to her lips and blew a few quick notes to get the beast's attention. The right head immediately snapped at attention while the other two looked around. "Good." Meg blew into the flute again, hitting several high notes in a row that even made her wince. The other two heads stirred and sniffed the air. Their growls momentarily stopped. "Now I have your attention," she thought. Her hands were slippery from sweat, but she held them steady and placed her lips on the reed. Once again she returned to the plight of the lily. The left head spotted the boat approaching and started to growl, and the center head roared in response. It wasn't working. Meg removed her lips from the reed and it exhaled slowly. Her hands were shaking. "Concentrate," she reminded herself. "Remember why you used to play." Meg started the melody again. This time she noticed the change right away. The second head snapped back, listening, and then the third, and then the first. She focused on each note, her fingers running along the reed as the notes came to her from the stores of her mind. She tried to forget about the creature and just focus on giving her best performance. "Forget he's here," she told herself. "Just play." After a few seconds, Meg felt a thick stillness. She opened her eyes ever so slowly. The boat had moved closer to the creature, but its heads weren't moving. Its eyes had drifted shut, and the creature was slowly sitting back. It lowered itself to the floor. She heard the first head snore, and her stomach began to relax. She kept playing as Karen passed by, not stopping her tune until Cerberus disappeared and the cavern closed behind them. "Impressive, mortal," Karen said as he rounded the corner of the cave, opened up again, revealing a massive structure in front of her. "You've earned passage to the underworld." She breathed a sigh of relief. She passed her first test. The underworld rose to greet them, the landscape in front of the boat looking like a howling tree with a city atop. Building after gray-stoned building was piled on top of each other, climbing haphazardly into the sky. Below them were two carnivorous eyes that seemed to lead in different directions, and below that were two bone-like columns holding the whole thing up. Meg knew what she'd find between them. Hades' lair. "Stop," Meg said quickly. For the first time, Karen stopped rowing. "Yes?" he questioned, an eerie grin in his skeptical lips. Where did she want to go? Which way was Asphodel Meadows? She started again at the large structure that led to each realm of the underworld. The fire of Tartarus was a dead giveaway as to which way not to go. But which way held Elysium, and which one contained Asphodel Meadows? How was she going to find Katerina there, without being seen? "I want to get off," Meg said suddenly. "Please pull over." "At the end," he said, and started to row again. "There is only one way in and one way out." "But I want to go to Asphodel Meadows," Meg protested, as the boat neared a familiar spiral staircase leading to the structure above it. It was lit by flaming blue torches. Meg had taken these steps many times before. Her eyes darted around for a sign of Hades. She started to get off this boat before he knew she was there. "Don't they all?" Karen said, steering on a platform near the stairs and stopping. "There is only one way to reach all paths of the underworld, and this is it. The end of the line, so to speak." Meg sighed and stepped off. She approached the stairs. "Thanks for the ride. Any chance you know which floor to get off on?" Karen looked at her. "No." Then he turned the boat around and headed back down the river, lost souls nipping at his bony heels. "Helpful. Thanks." Meg looked around. The cave was eerily quiet except for the sound of licking flames. Meg took a deep breath and began to climb, rushing past the first two floors she knew to be Hades' home. She never had a need to go above them before. All her work for Hades had taken place on Earth, so most of the underworld outside his lair was a complete mystery. Meg took the steps two at a time, staying close to the wall to avoid falling off the other side. Then she reached the first landing. She was relieved to see signs chiseled into the stone walls. Tartarus, down. Elysium, up. Asphodel Meadows, middle ground. Beneath the signs was a ticker that read, "Over 5,000,000,001 served." And counting. The underworld, helpful as always. Meg looked around. Well, she knew which general direction she wanted to head up anyway. Up. Out of the darkness sounded like a good idea. Meg started climbing the never-ending staircase. She felt like she was walking forever. She wound around, bend over bend, looking for an exit to Asphodel Meadows. But there were no off-ramps. After 10 flights, her legs were burning and her breath was ragged, giving her no choice but to stop for a moment. And just a moment. The fear of Hades appearing was enough to make her push on. She leaned against the wall for a second and looked up. She was high enough to know that she could actually see a light among the stacked towers. Was that blue sky she saw, or an illusion? Could that be the land of the living, or Elysium? She wasn't sure, but she knew she had to keep moving, so long as she didn't have a heart attack from all these stairs. Ping! Meg peered at the peculiar object that made the noise. Chiseled into the rock wall were hand-carved double doors. They were so seamlessly part of the rock. She could have walked right past them if they hadn't chimed. As she stared, the doors opened. Meg ran down a few steps to hide. "Going up?" asked a droll voice. Meg peeked around the corner. The space behind the doors was empty. Who was the voice talking to? Asphodel Meadows on level 2. Asphodel Meadows? Meg tentatively approached the open doors. Could this contraption take her up faster than the stairs? She peered into the small space. It was empty. "Going up?" the bodiless voice prattled on. Meg looked inside. There were 4 buttons. Elysium, Asphodel Meadows, Tartarus, and Hades' Palace. If this thing meant she could avoid more stairs and slip by Hades, it was worth trying. Oh, what the hell. She stepped in and pressed the button. Maybe using the word hell was her mistake. The doors closed and then opened again, filling with smoke that wound its way around her shoulders and down her body before she could react. She found herself being pulled forward. Hades' face suddenly appeared inches from her own. Hello there, Meglet. Miss me?